How are
How
you?
are you? I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I like your background.
Oh, thanks, my brick wall. Thank you.
So yeah, you've been in this industry practically your whole life. I remember you on back to the TRL days, which is ages ago.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was just in New York and I was pointing out 1515 Broadway to my husband and my son who didn't know what I was talking about, but I was like, that was MTV. That's like the TRL days, the giant window up there. We
The
would overlook
crowds.
all of Times Square. I know it was like such a moment in time that just probably doesn't make sense to anyone, any millennial at this point.
Yeah. Has it
Yeah.
felt like you've been living different lives?
When I think about that chapter of my life, yes. But then also there are some aspects of it that feel like yesterday that I can completely like tangibly grab onto and remember other things that I'm like, wow, that's yeah, that happened to a different person. It must have.
And I was going back to your filmography, and I have to say, because I said so, holds up, always on, every single weekend.
Thanks.
Best.
I mean, it's Diane Keaton. I'll watch anything she's in.
Yeah, I mean the chemistry
Yeah.
between that cast in general. I mean, you guys all came off as
Oh,
sisters, and it's just timeless.
thank you. That's so sweet of you.
But yeah, the last 6 years of your life have been This Is Us, and that to me, in my opinion, is a master class that you're doing in acting. Like you
Oh,
should be
thanks.
nominated every single year, as far as I'm concerned.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. Oh,
When
it's
you
it's crazy that it's over. It's like it's so wild. This chapter of my life just flew by. I'm like, what? I feel like it was just season one. Truly, like I remember so tangibly like the show getting picked up and going to New York for upfronts, and I'm like, now it's over. It's so strange.
well, when you get a show like that, you always hope that it goes for a long time, but sometimes
Yeah,
it really doesn't. But this is
yeah.
like the role of a lifetime for you.
Role of a lifetime. That is for sure. Yeah, in every way.
How has that felt? I'm sure you really can't sum it up in so many words, but
I mean, I think we all knew how special it was from the beginning. Like, you can't read that pilot and then have the good fortune of getting cast in a project like this and not know, like, oh, this is special. Like, even if no one sees it, I'm like, Dan Fogelman and, John and Glenn directing it. I knew that we were going to make something we were really proud of, whether or not the world got to see it. And then the show getting picked up and understanding very early on like the scope of the show and the breadth of the story that we were going to be telling, because that's not really indicated in the pilot is extraordinary on its own, but it's not until the end that you're like, oh, I'm putting together all these, connecting all these dots, this is one family. But you had no idea that like we weren't going to tell this story linearly, right? Like
right.
it wasn't until I got that script for episode 2 where I was like, oh, we're jumping 8 years in time. And then at the end of that episode, I'm like, oh, and here's this mother present day. It's the same character. Oh, and then the next episode, we're back at the hospital with the babies. And then the next episode, they're teenagers. Like, this is just the nature of this show and this narrative, and this is what we're going to be doing for the entirety of like the first season, which is all I knew at that point that we were going to be doing. um I really had no idea that 106 episodes later we would be here, and that like, oof, I get emotional talking about it. Like, the story ultimately is like so much about mom, about this like extraordinary unsung everyday heroine that there are tens, hundreds of millions of around the world, right? Like, that to me is, and now being a mom, it's all of it like wrapped up into this beautiful package of like, if someone had told me at the beginning of this process and auditioning for the show, like, this is the scope of the story we're telling, I don't know if I would have been able to like imagine myself in this position, because for every reason, but also like, whoa, just dipping my toes in the waters of like playing a new mom and playing a, a happy wife, like, a mom that loses a baby in childbirth. Like I was like, oh, this is tough stuff. I've never done anything like this before. But yeah, if someone was like, you're gonna be playing the same woman from 16 to 85 and every different like iteration of her and chapter of her life in between, I would have been like, oh no, you have the wrong, you're the
Right,
wrong person.
right, right.
I don't know how to be a grandma. Like that's wild. But here we are. And like, yeah, it truly has been the greatest gift. And the fact that Dan Fogelman was able to have the foresight to allow me this opportunity and this gift, that like, wow, it's changed my life. It's changed all of our lives. Like if you could talk to any cast member, like, yeah, when you're a part of something like this that has this sort of reaction and this sort of groundswell of love and support, from the beginning, it's like there's no going back. Like I yeah, I'm so grateful.
I'm honestly glad you got a little emotional there, because I was preparing for this interview and getting emotional myself. I'm like, be a professional, like get it together. How am I gonna get through this if I'm tearing up at like the questions that I'm formatting in my head?
But it's life, right? Like that's the cool thing about being a part of something. You're like, oh wow, I'm a part of something that moves me and it moves other people too. Like there are just not that many opportunities in life, and we're that to to feel things and to be given the permission to feel things. And I think that's been such a gift of a show like this that I know will never come around again. Like I fully am expecting this is it, to to have permission, give the audience permission and ourselves, like it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay for things to make you uncomfortable. It's okay for this to elicit whatever reaction, or maybe inspire you to have a difficult conversation that you never knew you needed to have or you've been putting off, or help you rethink a certain situation in your life. Like I've never been a part of anything like that before that allows for that. And that's what I think I'm gonna miss the most, is like our intense like reaction and connection to this material, because we see ourselves in it, even in the specificity. Even like this family is so specific with the alcoholic brother and the adopted brother and the sister with body issues and the alcoholic like there's so much to this that it's like this is not everyone's life, but it is. Like we're all able to still find our way into these stories and see ourselves, and again give ourselves permission to laugh and cry and everything in between.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so powerful about the show, is that you can take pieces like, oh, I see my mother in this part, or I see like the relationship between me and my mother in this
Oh
particular
yeah.
relationship. And because of that, the fans have such a reaction and a response for you. Like, what has it meant to have that relationship with the fans over the course of the last 6 years?
I think our show wouldn't have worked at all had it not been obviously for the support of the audience from the very beginning, but like their trust in us, their trust in Dan and the writers and us actors to tell this story, and to come along with us on this journey, because it's again not been this like linear story. Like they have allowed us very early on in the first season to like tell stories about characters that you didn't know you were going to care about. Like I remember very distinctly episode, I think 12 of the first season, we go back to the day that I gave birth, and like we follow the firefighter who found baby Randall, we follow Dr. K and his story, like characters from the pilot that you were like, oh wait, I was really supposed to pay attention to who that person was. And because that worked, it also allowed us then to focus entire episodes on like, hey, here's this incredible foster child who's going to become a part of Randall's family. You don't know that yet, but here's what her life looks like. The fact that we've been afforded those opportunities from the audience, because of the audience and their trust in us, and like, we're not going to steer you wrong, just stay with us here, and there's a purpose and there's an intention behind every piece of this story that we're telling. I think it's allowed for like a far more interesting journey for a show like this, and the fact that we've been able to like really expand the universe in a way. But yeah, their trust in us, their innate trust in the vision of this story that we're telling has meant everything. It's been so much fun. So much fun.
And the relationship between Jack and Rebecca, that's been such an anchor to the show. It's just,
Yeah.
I've always felt that way.
Yeah.
How was it creating that with Milo? That must have been an amazing experience.
You know, it was pretty effortless with Milo, I have to say. Like, I know that this is like once in a lifetime as well. And we've acknowledged that to one another. Like, we'll never have another partner. And whatever we do moving forward, not to say that it will be better or worse, but it's like there was such an instant chemistry and trust in each other that I just know it's never gonna look or feel like this again. And that's okay. But like it's been the opportunity of a lifetime again to like all of it, like the show just in general, but also building what I've been able to build with Milo, what we've been able to build together is is great in its imperfections. Like I, as much as people sort of love to put Jack and Rebecca as individuals and as a couple like on this pedestal, I love that they're not perfect. I love that they're fallible and they're human and they make mistakes. And Rebecca has made choices in her life that I adamantly disagree with. Um, but the fact that she is human and that she recognizes when she makes mistakes and she finds a way to pick herself back up with grace and put one foot in front of the other is like is inspirational and aspirational as a mom, as a new mom too. I'm like, this is the template of what I want to look at, not someone who is just like picture perfect, this veneer that is completely unattainable. Rebecca is real. And I think Jack is real too. And what may have started out, I think, is again, this veneer of like, wow, these are the perfect parents. Like that was never the case. And I love that as the series has sort of gone on, like the audience has, bared witness to that. And again, are able to hopefully see themselves and their own families in these characters.
Yeah, and I mean, when we talk about characters, you always think of them in arcs, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you had the opportunity to create a life of someone from their 20s to their 60s, I want to say 80s.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that wordless body language, like I'm always struck by how you've created this body language for the different eras of Rebecca, whether she's like light in her 20s or she's in her 40s after she had just lost Jack, and then she holds herself in a different way in her 60s. Like, how was it to create that? Like, you have to feel that in your bones, right?
Yeah. I mean, for all of us, I think on the show, everything exists in the writing. Like so much of it is on the page, and I'm, yeah, it like makes our jobs exponentially easier knowing that. But I was really daunted initially. Now there's been more of a familiarity as the seasons have gone on of like, not that there's automatic pilot ever, but you get to you get an episode and you're like, okay, I'm Rebecca and it's 2 years after Jack and I'm just starting to date again and think about my life in a new way. And it's like you're able to sort of make those shifts a little easier. But I remember the very first time, like 3 weeks before we started shooting the second episode, I get this email from Dan. I've got to find it again, actually, where he's like, so we have this crazy idea that we would try to let you play Rebecca present day. And we're going to go through like just a calvary of hair and makeup tests and find the right like effects house to like do prosthetics, and we're going to just see, and if anyone doesn't buy it, then we'll look into like casting someone to play the character in that time period. And I went through like, it was like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I went through all these different like hair makeups. One day I should put it out there like on Instagram, because there are some things that you're like, whoa, too old, too young. I've just crazy makeup. And we finally nailed it. And then my first like test on camera was opposite Ron Cephas Jones. Like, I know, I'm like,
no pressure there, Mandy.
no pressure whatsoever. It was like just diving into the deep end of like an Olympic sized pool. I was terrified, and it was sort of like, it was really do or die. I didn't realize it as much then, but I remember like talking about it with Zoe, with our makeup department head afterward. Yeah, I was basically given this mandate of like, if it doesn't work, if it doesn't look good on camera, then like they're just casting somebody else. And luckily it all ended up working out, but it was terrifying. And that first season, like initially, I just don't think that there was as much of a plan to incorporate Rebecca present day in the story. And I think it evolved and she became more of a mainstay as the seasons went on. But it was really daunting. It was really scary. Like the physicality, and like you said, just like kind of trying to think about the different time periods of her life, and where her head was, and making sure that like I carried that in my body, because it's a 60 some odd year old widower, and a grandmother, like all of these things that I have no frame of reference for in life. That was terrifying to me, to think about like how I would carry myself differently at that time period versus a light, energetic 20-year-old who's got like the world is her oyster, and she's in love, and thinks she's going to be some famous like singer, and there's a wild juxtaposition and difference there.
Is there a certain part of Rebecca's life that just feels really close to you? I'm sure it all feels close, but is there a specific time?
Well, right now it's like anything playing with the babies is, I'm like, yep, I know how to do this. I want to go back now to like season 1 when we were trying to change diapers, and I was like terrifyingly like asking Milo, like, how do you change a diaper? How do you swaddle a baby? And he's got nieces and nephews, so he has a lot of experience, but I like literally had never held a newborn before. So I was so freaked out about like having to take care of someone else's child and pretend like it was my own. But so anything having to do with the babies now, I'm like, oh, can we go back? Like, so this season's been a lot easier. Anytime, there are babies in our arms, I'm like, I got this. I know exactly what this looks like. But in that sense, then it makes you want to like go back and completely redo everything. Because being a parent now, I'm like, oh, I have some tiny little idea of what this all means now that I was just faking before. Now I have some new colors in my toolbox to play with. I can't wait to use them.
And as I was going back like through the bigger moments of the seasons, there's so many, right? There's so many that feel like big moments. There's the first time that Jack and Rebecca meet. There's a Super Bowl episode, of course. Is there a moment or an episode that feels like, like this is the one I'm going to remember? Or is it just really just a collective experience?
Definitely the collective. It's hard to like distill down 106 episodes. I do at some point want to go back and rewatch everything, because I feel it's hard to remember everything, But that, I'd say the Super Bowl episode, just because so much of the show at that point was like leading to that, leading to like what happens to Jack, not only just the event itself, but the ripple effect that it has on the family for generations, for years and years to come, the effect it has on his kids, on his wife, like everything that they sort of carry around for the rest of their lives because of losing this person. But there was so much like secrecy wrapped up in it. And so that was exciting. And knowing that the episode was going to air right after the Super Bowl, like there felt like there was so much like electricity around that episode. And the way we shot it, like they built this set in the middle of nowhere, of the like outside frame of the house to burn it down. But yet we shot some of the stuff in this weird, like, it was all outside and it was freezing. And, I'm in this like jersey and jeans, and Milo's in like, a t-shirt and like pajama bottoms. And it's like 50 degrees out. We're freezing outside in the middle of the night. They're like burning the house down around us. And it was so bizarre. And then we shot like other parts of it at the actual like house that we shoot at, and that it lives as the outside of the house in like Eagle Rock here. And they had a stunt double dressed as Milo in case there was like paparazzi on set. So like they didn't see it. I know, it was just like so crazy. And then all the stuff that happens in the hospital with the candy bar, like there were so many moving parts to that episode, that it's one I'll never ever forget, because our show is not involved in quite that way. Telling an ensemble family drama is usually like a little more contained. So that was fun and weird, and such a really bizarre, cool experience.
I always think back to that candy bar moment, like just from a performance perspective of it, like where does that choice come from? Or is that in the script? Like, no, it says she takes a bite of her candy bar.
It says she takes a bite of her candy bar. So yeah, that wasn't my idea. It was just sort of like, I think that, that maybe not universal, but that the reaction, the different varying reactions we all have to shocking news like that, it's such a absolute disbelief, and that sort of like quickly turns to like from annoyance to anger of like, not only like are you so wrong in your assessment of what happened, like you don't remember us, like this is I'm actually insulted, like we were just with you 5 minutes ago, and remember where our house burned down. It's just like it was such an interesting reaction of one that I don't imagine I would have at hearing that kind of news. But I loved that the way it was written was sort of just that, yeah, that intense like annoyance, and just I cannot believe you're bothering me and burdening me with this, like this is so irresponsible of you, like let me go tell my husband, in fact, because this is like we should get out of here, basically. It was, yeah, I loved getting to play that, because then you get to juxtapose that with actually the reality of that news hitting someone, like in their face so viscerally. It's not even just receiving the news, it's seeing it with your own eyeballs and feeling it with your own body, that I got to experience, because that was the way the reaction was written initially.
Right. And I have to say, the last few episodes have been rough. I mean, from Miguel and on, like, I will walk you through my emotional experience from last week's episode. I woke up the next morning with a sty. Okay.
No.
Yes. I woke up with a sty on my arm, like, well, this is us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Ow.
don't apologize. So I was wondering, like, what is the filming experience of that?
Well, have you seen 17 yet? The Train?
The train, no. We're
Okay,
coming up
that's
to one
that's what airs
by.
tomorrow. Yeah, yeah. Tomorrow is The Train. So that was, I mean, these last few I would say are, yeah, just a lot. Just knowing what we're leading to, knowing that it's the end. I would say for like The Train, the one that's airing tomorrow, was the hardest, I think, of the entire series for me, just again, because it's the end, and I'm simultaneously like saying goodbye to my friends and this character and the show and the experience, and this character saying goodbye to the world, to
Mhm.
her world. And it's like just such a weird confluence of emotions, all rolled into one. And not being present, like, there's part of the episode where I'm in bed with my eyes closed, and I'm listening to different people come in and say goodbye, and I thought, oh wow, so I get to like be cozy all day, and after going through 5 hours of hair and makeup, I get to just lounge around all day and listen to my friends like deliver these beautiful monologues to me about my character. Like, this is going to be such a treat. And the first one was Susan.
Oh no.
And thank God the camera was on her, like started on her coverage, because like she started speaking, and I'm just like tears rolling down my cheeks. And I was like, no, 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 that's not allowed. Like, I have to, like, I'm not really here. So I can't be crying at what she's saying. So it was actually way harder than I thought it was going to be, because I like had to completely like disassociate myself from, this is it. This is the end of this experience. This is the end of the line. Don't listen to what they're saying. I had to pretend I was floating in the middle of the ocean with like a cocktail on a sunny day. Like, literally, I was like, where can I put myself that would be the most relaxing, that I can just lose myself in that memory or that moment? Because I was just crying listening to everybody. And I cried so hard the first time I read the script that I got sick. And then subsequently, like, bawled I read it like 5 times. And every time I cried just as hard. And I was like, how am I going to do this on the day? How am I going to listen to this person or that person say these lines to me and not like just be a blubbering mess? Because it's like, again, it's like, it's saying goodbye to this character, but it's also Mandy saying goodbye to the show. And so I'm like, oh, I get emotional thinking about it. I was like, this is just going to be so hard. This is the ultimate challenge. And it kind of was, but then it also was like, oh, it's just beautiful. And I allowed myself to like get caught up and carried away in the emotion during certain moments. And then once I got that out of the way, I was allowed to like kind of just like come back to whatever we were talking about and have, a take or two where I wasn't like,
Yeah, sobbing.
yeah.
Well, I have to say, I love within the show that you found your love of music again. Because again, I remember those TRL days, and then I remember like the folk music era of Mandy Moore.
Right.
Um, this is an evolution of your sound. I was listening to it yesterday. It just feels like such a great homecoming for you. Is that how it feels for you to be making this music again?
Thank you. That is the ultimate compliment. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm 38 years old, and the fact that I can still make music and I can make it on my own terms, and I don't have any expectation from like the outside world or a record label or anything. It's like, just go make a record if you want. Like, no one's waiting for it. It's really just for me. And the fact that like there are other people then out there in the world that will get the chance to listen to it is so cool. Like, I music has always kind of been that for me. Maybe not in the very beginning, but shortly thereafter, it was like I never had the same kind of success as my contemporaries, but it was great because it allowed me to go off and try acting, and it allowed me to sort of slip into roles that maybe those opportunities wouldn't have been afforded again to my contemporaries because they were so much more famous. And like, I'm sure you watch people on screen and you're like, I know who they're dating, I know their hometown, I know their drama with their boyfriend, like, all that stuff. And it just wasn't, I didn't have the same kind of story. But also because I didn't have that kind of success, I didn't have the expectation. So like the record label at a certain point stopped caring. And they're like, oh, you want to make a cover record of XTC and Joe Jackson, Lee Mitchell, and we don't care, 18-year-old, like, this is your last record with us, go off and do whatever you want. But those kinds of choices like then ultimately led me to writing my own music and making the kind of music I wanted to. And yeah, and it, like you said, it was because of This Is Us, like very early on, Dan Fogelman kind of writing this musical background into Rebecca's story, put me in the studio. And I think it was the 5th episode of the first season, I was singing the Little Feat Linda Ronstadt song Willin', and I was in the studio and there was a band, and I was like, oh, I miss this. I miss music. I miss this being a part of my life. I miss, like, this fire is still in me. I need to figure out how to make this a bigger part of my life again. And lo and behold, a couple years later, I had a record under my belt, and now another record. And so it's very, very, very much thanks in part to the show, because I'm not sure I was ready ever to like find those musical roots again. It was too painful, too much baggage.
Right. And now you're going on tour. So what is that even
Yeah.
going to look like? Going to bring the whole family?
Gonna bring the whole family. I don't know what it's gonna look like. It's probably gonna be a shit show. I mean, we have a 14-month-old. And so, yeah, on a tour bus with kid. My husband and I wrote this record together, and he's in my band, and my brother-in-law is the drummer. Like, it's gonna be so much fun. It'll be like a crazy fun story one day to tell Gus, like, you're on tour with us. We went and played 25 shows around the country. I also, like, selfishly, I'm so excited to have like the emotional catharsis of something that is not This Is Us, to like process this chapter of my life being over, have somewhere to like put my emotions every day. That's not another job that I think I would compare too much to. Like, personally, I'm not ready. Like, I need distance from this chapter. Even though job security is wonderful and it's terrifying not to have a job, I'm like, oh, am I ever going to work again? I know every,
I don't think you'll have to worry about that, man.
no, every creative person I know feels that way. You're just like, this is probably it, so I should just enjoy it and save my money. I am excited that, like, yeah, I have music to pour myself into, and then I'll have some distance to go, what is next? That, like, I know nothing will be this job. It's probably going to have to be like a serial killer or something, like just 180 degrees away from Rebecca, because I don't know what else it could be right now that like I wouldn't compare and go, well, this isn't what I'm used to. Like, it's just, yeah, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah. Maybe a Hulu miniseries.
Yeah, I think, like, yes, a limited series of something I can like dip my toe into for 10 episodes sounds really, really exciting.
Well, thank you so much, Mandy. I really appreciate it.
Thank
I mean,
you.
this has felt like an insane conversation to have. Like, I remember those TRL days. I'm only 2 years younger than you, so I feel like I grew up with you. So
I'm so honored. I'm so honored. Well, thank you for the very thoughtful questions today, and I really appreciate. Yeah, I appreciate the conversation. I hope good luck on these next 2 episodes.
listen,
I haven't seen them yet, but it's a lot.
if I wake up with a sty, I'll be tweeting at you, man.
No. Yeah, please tweet at me. I'll help you find a good eye doctor.
All right, take care.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.